Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Intuition Summit. Today, our guest speaker is Wendie Colter, and we're going to be hearing about medical intuition. Wendie is a certified medical intuitive practitioner, a master certified wellness coach, author, speaker, founder, and CEO of the Practical Path Incorporated, presenting intuitive development programs for wellness professionals and the public. Wendie's comprehensive accredited certification program, the Practical Path Medical Intuitive Training, has been pivotal in helping integrative, functional, and holistic healthcare professionals develop and optimize their innate intuitive abilities. She has successfully trained doctors, nurses, and health and wellness practitioners from every discipline. And she is truly a pioneer in this area. Wendie's trailblazing research in medical intuition has been published in peer-reviewed journals, which is the highest standard for review of these kind of studies, including the Journal of Integrative and Complementary Medicine and Global Advances in Health and Medicine. Welcome, Wendie.
Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to see you, Emmy and Abby.
Our
Thanks, Wendie.
pleasure. Welcome, Abby, my co-host on the tour of the Intuition Summit of Light and Love.
This is our little symbol.
I like it.
It's on her book and we're just feeling the love. So, you know.
Wendie, you have been working and playing in the realm of intuition and health for over 20 years. How did you get into this area?
Like many people in this field, I started out as an intuitive child, seeing things, hearing things, intuiting things that, people would look at me funny or they'd go, well, that's just Wendie. And later in life, I became an energy healer. I studied Reiki and other energy modalities, like many do, and was getting a lot of hits, like many do, intuitive information that I wouldn't have known any other way, other than using that intuitive ability. And what I noticed was that sometimes my clients would come in for an energy healing and they'd be able to release a lot of stuff, right? That's a wonderful thing about energy healing. But sometimes they'd come back again and again with the same energetic blocks. And I was curious to know why someone would let go of something and why someone wouldn't. And I noticed that my hits over time were getting more and more precise, and I could see right into the client's physical body, and I could see all the life history and see where this issue might have begun. And so I was relating that kind of in bits and pieces because that was not what they were there to hear. They were there to get a healing. And at one point I said to a client who had a lot of issues that weren't resolving, I said, do you mind if I just look first? And I'll never forget, they said, yeah, sure. And I started doing a scan of the body and a read of the body. And I was really having a conversation with the client's physiology and biofield to find out what was going on. Now, I didn't call it medical intuition because I didn't really know that's what it was. But that information, it was like an avalanche of information, really. And that information was so valuable to the client that I realized that this was something different than energy healing. And it was different than a hit. It was much more structured the way I ended up developing it and much more in depth. And when I went to give them a healing afterwards, they were releasing things that they had been holding on to for decades. And I thought that was really fascinating. And it made me understand that medical intuition can be used as a separate skill set to any kind of healing modality. And the other thing is, it can be used with any healing method. So conventional medicine as well, everything in between. And that really set me off on thinking about who would best value from this. In the meantime, of course, doctors are calling me, their patients are getting better. And they're like, hi, can you help me with another patient? I'm like, sure. And it was all very under the radar for decades until quite recently. When I began speaking at healthcare conferences, but we'll get to that in a moment, I'm sure.
One little snippet that I want to just kind of expand on is that you mentioned that you were providing energy healing to people. So that's non-touch can be touch, but generally non-touch, a service of helping people to work with their, some people might call it the human auric field, the bio field. And examples of that are like Reiki, Qigong, healing touch, therapeutic touch. There's probably, this goes as old as humans really are, back to shamanic traditions and even in temples and churches and so forth with laying on of hands. But something that you mentioned was that you said you provide energy healing, but people weren't completely getting well until you did your medical intuitive assessment. And I'm wondering if you discovered that there was something about the person needing to be witnessed, or that conversation that maybe, or what is the element that you felt healed them more permanently?
I love that word, witness. That's a lovely word. It wasn't all my clients, all my clients. Some were really ready to let go of things. The difference between healing and not healing, I think, is the question you're asking. And that's a really potent question, because it has a lot of layers of meaning, and you have to be careful about how you talk about it, because everybody wants to heal. I don't care where you are, what's going on. Nobody wants to feel bad in their body, mind, and spirit. What the difference is, the way I've defined it, is permission for wellness, permission for healing. That's a very potent word, permission, and it has a lot of, like I said, a lot of nuances in it. But one of the things that I do in my practice is I observe permission. And this is, over a period of time, working with many, many clients, to see where their where the energetics are for releasing something, for changing it, for letting it go. That is client to client. There is no one formula for it. And my job is to discuss with their bodies and their higher selves, because we're working in a spiritual way, what is it that will help them shift and change and release. And that is unique to every individual. That's a cornerstone of my work, and a cornerstone of my teaching is how to gauge that kind of thing. And it's not about anyone's willingness or ability. It's literally about where the energetic signature is at any given moment and what that means.
Well, that's fascinating. I recently had a couple conversations with Carolyn Mace, who is also a pioneer in medical intuition, and she wrote a book called Why People Don't Heal and How They Can. And she trained with, or worked with, Norm Shealy, who is a former neurosurgeon out of Harvard. And I want to go a little bit more deeply into this with you. So when you said that there's a signature, I'm just going to say that I think that she discovered, for her, she shared that she found that many people, she said, didn't want to heal, or maybe it was that they were having a hard time figuring out how to heal. So in your work, can you give some examples of what some of your clients or the people you've served, how you've helped them, and what was it that they needed that was sort of like the switch that really helped things open for them?
Yeah, it really is. It's a turning point. Many clients call me or tell me afterwards, that session was a turning point for me. I was able to find a path. My job is to help the client find a path to health, a path to wellness. And the permission level, that where they are energetically is just part of it. It's not all of it. The body has very, very specific things to say about what it's asking for. And one of the challenges with modern healthcare is that people will look at their patient through only the lens they have. And why wouldn't they? It's the lens they've studied in school. It's what their profession is. And it doesn't matter if it's a complementary field like acupuncture or Ayurveda or chiropractic or something like that, or nutrition or whatever, or conventional medicine with all the specialties. It's still a lens, and that lens becomes a bias. Does that make sense? And that bias is what, as a medical intuitive, I need to not have because I want to communicate directly with the body, directly with the spirit, directly with what is going on here in the biofield, to find out what the body and the biofield are literally asking for health and wellness. And I'm going to see connections that conventional medicine doesn't make and things like that. So it's a very broad and specific, you could say, process to pinpoint what could help the client move forward on their path to healing, whether it's physical healing, emotional healing, any healing, spiritual healing, it's all of a piece anyway. So we want to look at it from that perspective. And that's where I see permission, that little marker, you could call it. That's informative. It's not the end all be all. It's just informative. Because here's why. This is important. We have this thing called free will. And free will is actually always in play when it comes to our health. And that can be really challenging for people to hear because, again, nobody wants to be ill. But there is always information from the body's and spirits and energy's perspective about how something manifested, why it manifested, what the information in there is for the person, and how to move forward. That's the job of the medical intuitive as I see it.
Right. And no one wants to be blamed or feel that it's their fault for what they're going through, right? That's a tricky area as well.
That is, in a nutshell, what is the opposite way to go. It's not about blame. It's not about fault. It's about whatever was manifested and why. And there's so much powerful release in understanding the why.
So let's just back up for a moment. For those who are thinking medical intuition, what really is that? So how do you see into a person's mind, body, and spirit? And what is your evaluative process? And then we can, spend some more time with that healing again.
Sure. Well, how I look at the body is very similar, although not really, but it's the closest description I can find to looking at an MRI. I use clairvoyance, which is a visual skill set, rather than the other clairs, which you can feel and you can hear and you can sense and all that stuff. So I'm using the visual skill of clairvoyance because guess what? I want to see what's going on in that liver of yours, see physically the physiology of it. And that's similar to an MRI, although I see in color, I see in 3D, I see in all kinds of depth down to the cellular level, so that there's no limitations on that. And when I look into the body and I see what's going on there, then again, it's a question answer process, not with the client, but with the client's body via their spiritual connection, so to speak. And that's a very specific process, and it's a lot of fun and really, really fascinating. But that is in a nutshell the process.
You make it sound so easy, Wendie. Now, Abby, I know that you and I also have been working as intuitives for quite a number of years as well. Abby, what's going through your mind about being able to see into somebody's body?
I just think the body is so beautiful. Like it's our gift, right? So when you're talking, I just, my mom taught me very well to like take care of my body. So I knew it was the temple. So when you're speaking to me, the body is just giving a response or feedback as to what's happening at an emotional level that then manifests in the body. So you're seeing it. And so I can actually see into the body as well. So I understand what you're saying because it's going to the source and the core of where it's created. And I think, for everybody to look at, is there any disease, meaning not you have cancer or something, but like any conflict, any energy that is feeling disrupted, what is going on there? Because, even for me, it's like, if I feel a little anxious, what's going on there? Okay, let me just pause and listen to my intuition and let my own intuition start to guide me. So I just invite everybody to kind of tune into your own body and listen to what feedback it's giving you, right? And then there's professionals that can go deeper. So we're so glad you're here. And yeah, Emmy and I practice as well. I just feel like it's so important to just live daily from that place of like introspection and connection to the body as that gift and just giving us that feedback. So.
Well, I love that. And thank you for stating it so beautifully. I do have a program for everyone to learn how to do that for themselves, to learn how to query their own bodies, to be present for the messages on a very deep level. And that's incredibly valuable, just as you said, Abby, for insight, for shifting things, for moving energy. I mean, you can't really state it enough. I wish children were taught this, from a young age, as you were, because it's such a great skill set to have. And one of the things I want to say is that the body has its own consciousness. It has its own perspective, and we have to honor that. Most of the time, it's our minds that are kind of running the show. Our bodies really want to be heard. They're like little children. They want to be listened to. They want to be taken care of. So that's part of the education as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I love
Thank you
that.
for mentioning children, because one of the specialties for our dear friend and soul sister, Abby Gooch, joining us here today, is that she has the Intuitive Child program. And that's one of the reasons that I fell in love with her so quickly, among many reasons, is because I agree with you, Wendie. And that's something that I think a lot of us who get into this, well, in this context, in this topic, healing arts, but also intuition, is that we recognize, wow, our world would be very different if more people had this, we're aware of this ability, because we all have intuition, as we know, at a younger age. So maybe at some point I'm going to plant a seed, you and Abby can connect and develop something for children to have more awareness connected with their own health and wellness and well-being.
I am so there. I've been wanting to do this kind of work and provide programs to children and teenagers. It is such a missing piece and so needed for children. The one thing that this work will do, most intuitives would probably agree, who knows, but I would guess that it raises your own sense of self-awareness and your own sense of understanding. It's really great for self-esteem, I think.
It's
Yeah.
true.
You know, it's very acknowledging, this kind of work.
No,
Yeah.
it's from the inside out. It's a confidence that you can't shake, you know, when you're truly listening to your intuition, and as children too, to have that support, right? I was an intuitive child too. Luckily, I think we all were at some level, right? And I think it's just becoming aware of it, for sure. So yeah, listening.
Yeah, and also the fact that children, and we're going off on a line here, but I like this topic. Children are often and mostly shushed and told what they're seeing is not true or lies, and people end up not speaking about their intuition from very young age, or at some point where they understand that it's not being accepted. Abby, you, and I'm pleased to say myself as well, may have had, you know, people around you that didn't discourage it. And that allows people that freedom, or more freedom, to just kind of explore that. But, you know, it's never too late, is I guess the message I'm trying to get across here. It's never too late to develop your intuition. It's innate, it's hardwired, it belongs to us.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. It's funny because I've shared that my parents were very supportive of it, but we actually had something happen where they didn't believe me at one point. And so I had an experience of contrast too. But like we were saying, that intuition, it's such an inner confidence that I just knew that I knew. So it actually made me stronger in my intuition too. So if somebody has ever doubted your intuition, or even your own head has doubted it, I invite you to like really drop in and let that intuition get stronger, because sometimes that contrast can actually be that catalyst that really helps you trust yourself, right? Like there was a gift even in that. So yeah, it's very cool. Yeah.
Love it, love it.
Yeah.
Wendie, for those listening who are really just trying to understand intuition, can you share a little bit more about what your methodology is for actually seeing into the body, just to help people understand how that's even possible?
You're asking a question I'm not sure how to answer, because I don't know how it's possible, but I do know that it exists. But again, that the two programs I teach, one is the main program, the Medical Intuitive Training for Health and Wellness Professionals, and the other one is the one for the public and everyone, and that is the Medical Intuition for Healing and Self-Care. Both of them are rooted in the skill set of visual intuition. Visual intuition is using your mind's eye. And that everybody knows how to do pretty much. You can close your eyes and think of a purple elephant with pink spots, and you'll pretty much see it. Or you could think of the face of your loved one, or the face of your animals, your pets. People can use that skill, but they don't, you know, making the leap from a mind's eye experience to looking into somebody else's experience, that's a learning curve. It's not impossible, obviously, but it is a learning curve. And that is what the main program is all about, learning how to do that. In the self-study program, you're going to learn how to do it with your own body. And that's you know what it's like? It's like learning a new language or developing a muscle, right? It takes practice, it takes time. And frankly, it takes a good teacher or guide to help you understand the ins and outs of how to do that. Because it's, you know, certain kinds of intuition are very inherent. Abby's talking about sense of knowing. That's claircognizance. Many, many nurses and people in healthcare and everybody else feels things intuitively. That's called clairsentience. These are wonderful clairs. But for me, looking into the body, in order to have that clean slate without taking anything into my own energy field, so to speak. I want to be able to see.
I know you have a whole training program. Can you share just a few tips or ways that you guide people to be able to connect more with themselves for their health and wellness?
Absolutely. The very first step in doing this work from my perspective is learning how to ground your body. What is grounding? Grounding is an energetic connection between your physiology, your physical body, and your energy field, and the earth on which we live, right? The planet Earth. And you want to send some energy. I like the visual of a root, like a tree root, just down from the bottom of your spine all the way down, or from the soles of your feet, actually. That's a good way to do it for people, because sometimes you can put your feet on the ground and feel your feet touching the ground. Send those roots down from your feet all the way down, I don't know, 10 feet down, 20 feet down, maybe all the way down into the center of the earth, and feel that connection from the earth to your body. That's a very powerful connection to create. And there's all kinds of ways to ground. This is a way I like to teach people. The next step, while you're here grounded, imagining those roots down into the earth, I'm going to ask you to imagine a buffer of light all around your body, maybe about 3 feet out, all around your body. Now, this light is incredibly protective. And this is really, really good for people who are intuitive and want to develop their intuition, but don't want to take on energy of other people, right? So imagine as if you had a big shield of light all around your body. And that is, again, energetically protective. So now you're grounded and you're shielded. And those two steps right there, I find absolutely pivotal, like primary, in how to work with your own energy. Just doing that alone can help develop your intuition, believe it or not. And on my website, for everyone out there, there are meditations in the guided meditations area with grounding, shielding, releasing energy out of your biofield that you no longer want to have, like anything you want to let go of. You can learn how to do that. And then and also a meditation called Your Body's Wisdom, where you can learn how to make that connection between your mind and your body. And those are free for you to listen to and enjoy. And my clients love those. So I'd say go check them out.
Oh, what a gift to share that with people. And also just that very brief exercise that was very similar to something that I was taught in my medical Qigong training, which my teacher trained in China at hospitals with medical Qigong masters. And I agree, that's a very fundamental component. And what I love about that, even though that was just a very brief time, probably under 2 minutes, maybe even a minute, is that I felt my body start to shift and I felt light, connecting with that light. And even just doing that is very healing in and of itself, right?
Oh, without question, grounding, shielding, meditating, finding ways to release energy. These are basic energy hygiene practices. That's what I call it, energy hygiene. As far as I'm concerned, everybody can benefit from this. You don't have to have like some deep, intense meditation practice, although that's good too. And
And having a
also
teacher
recommended,
is really can be even go further with it too. Yeah.
without question. Yeah.
How about people who maybe are listening and thinking, I've been dealing with, maybe they've had multiple back surgeries, or maybe they've had some type of chronic condition, whether it's physical or mental, or perceived physical as or mental, meaning that there might actually be something deeper going on for them. How do you help those folks? And what do you say to the folks, this is kind of a two-parter, who feel that they've tried everything, or maybe you've even worked with some of these folks, and that wound just is not healing? And of course, we all transition from this lifetime. So maybe it's a three-parter, because I worked in healthcare for a number of years myself. And, it really does give you pause when some people just, what in mainstream healthcare is termed as, they just keep declining and then they die. But maybe that's part of their soul's path, right? So how do you
Sure.
kind of weigh and balance all of that, Wendie?
That becomes a much more spiritual process. When people are ready to transition out of their bodies, that's a very unique and profound place. I'm not here to prognose anyone. I can't do that. I cannot diagnose, prognose, or prescribe. That is off the table for me. I'm not a healthcare professional, and medical intuitives should not be doing that either because it's not within scope of practice. unless they are a licensed professional and they have that ability to do that within their license. So that's another conversation for another time. But what you're asking about is when someone is either having difficulty healing or when their bodies are just done. Let's start with the people who are having very challenging health issues and having a hard time healing. A lot of that can be because, Western medicine really doesn't have answers for them. That's what I typically see. Then my job is to find out from their spirit and their body what could help. What could help? And sometimes it's very incremental. Usually it's incremental, but there's always information. I'll give you that. There's always information on a path forward. And that's about health and healing, because it's not just physical, it's also where's the emotional root? Where's the life history, right? How did this thing manifest? That information alone can be pivotal for people in their healing process. Really, really powerful, actually. And I never leave that out. That's a big component. The second question you're asking is what happens for people who are really, their body is ready to go? Well, again, that is a different kind of session as well, because that's about their life history, what they've learned, what they've assimilated, what they're aware of, what their higher self wants them to know. That's a very spiritual practice. And it's a very revered one. It's not one that most of my clients come to me with, even if they are suffering from, difficult and challenging diseases. Generally speaking, you'll consult a medical intuitive when you want to know what to do to heal and how to move forward. But I have read for people who are on their bodies are on their way out. And that's really, honestly, it's a very profound and beautiful experience, because we are souls inhabiting a body, not the other way around, right? Our souls are not there, they inhabit our body, but they also live on. If you want to go into the spiritual, I'm right there with you. And so what does that mean? So when I'm discussing is the word, their issues or their perceptions or their what's going on for them with their higher self, who am I talking to? Their higher self, we all have one. It's our spiritual nature. And our spiritual nature is always present for us, and it is us. So, you're asking such a wonderful multi-leveled question. I'm not sure I can nutshell it, as I hope I've done a decent job.
Oh, no, you're doing great, Wendie. I think it's also individual to each person or soul, right? Or spirit. And also I think it's a matter of everybody's has their own journey on when they've tried put their best effort in, and then maybe it is time to transition into the spirit world. So that's, unique for everybody.
It is. And the other thing you want to take into account is past lives and the Akashic records and what here, let me put it into some frame here. The frame is our soul's path. What is the purpose of our soul's path? Right? We incarnate from past lives. We have many, many, many thousands of past lives. We might have lives in the quote future, quote past. But all of
time
this,
is an illusion.
all of this is to help us do what? It's to help our souls grow, right? That's it. That's what this human experience is all about. And that growth is so individual and so personal and so profound and frankly so beautiful. It is honestly a privilege to look at it. That's how I think about it. It's a privilege to be able to dialogue with the higher self about what is the meaning here, what is the purpose, what is the future, what is the potential, put it that way, for this soul to grow and expand and really have the life they want. And that can happen at any point in the continuum of someone's life or in the continuum of past lives into present, into potential futures. That's what this is all about if you want to really get into the spiritual nub of it.
Yeah, we do want to get into the spiritual nub of all of it. And I think also where my mind goes to is that sometimes people, we have free will, but I think that, we do seem to have sacred contracts, like Carolyn Mace's title of one of her books says, that we do maybe agree to have certain experiences in our life. So with health and healing, maybe some of that soul journey is to heal from something. And maybe there is some challenge that some people might experience that is there as sort of grist for the mill of their own soul's growth. So can you share a little bit about when you work with people, how you work with that component.
I'll give you a case study, which I think will help. This is from the book, Essentials of Medical Intuition, A Visionary Path to Wellness, which is available. But I wrote a lot of case studies coming from my own practice, and I also interviewed a number of medical intuitives and their case studies as well. And this one I thought was very profound for this idea. This was a client who had had back pain for as long as he could remember, since he was a little child. And no one could get to the source of his back pain. And I'll tell you briefly where I saw it began, because there was no family history on it. He just knew that he was in pain until he was a young preteen, and he couldn't get out of bed one day. He liked to play sports, and he was just in so much pain. What I saw in his energy, just to give you the backstory, was when he was a toddler, his mother took him to the supermarket. And remember those little mechanical horse rides that they have in the front of the supermarket? She put him on the horse. She tried to strap him in. She put the money in, and he fell off. And as like 4-year-old or so, he hit his back on that, concrete that the horse was kind of bolted to, and he harmed his spine. And, no one knew about it because he was not really talking about it, or he was crying. So what happened was, over years, doctors they couldn't diagnose it well. He was just too young. And so in his experience, there was a lot of confusion, physical pain, anger, resentment because no one was listening to him. And all of that was caught in his back. And when I saw him, he was, an adult, and I'm looking at the physiology, and I could see, that there was some, cracks and whatnot in the vertebrae, and I could see all of that damage that had been there for quite a while, and he'd had a number of surgeries as well. But what I really saw here, which really made a difference, was so much anger caught in that area. Anger, frustration, confusion, all of this childhood trauma, you could say, traumatic experience, was still there. As I described the story of how this occurred, which nobody could pinpoint in his life, all of a sudden that anger and all that ball of energy started to dissipate, because he was hearing what actually happened. And that gave him, remember, we're talking about permission for wellness, his permission level started going up and up and up and up. And I'm looking at this going, okay. And as we're talking to the body, the body's like, well, have him try this and have him try that. That might work, and that might work. It's like this whole conversation opened up because he was ready to hear it. Now that is pretty miraculous for him. And he was one of the people that said, wow, that just turned the corner for me in all of this. He was able to process these emotions that he'd been holding on since he was 4 years old, right? So this is the value and power in my world of combining this idea of body, mind, spirit. What does that mean? That means we're not separate from each other. The body and the mind do not, the spirit, we're all together as one. So if we address it that way, what can happen? What kind of healing can happen? A lot, a lot more profound than we might even think.
You're getting to the root cause with people.
Exactly.
And how much do you think thoughts, emotions, feelings are a root cause for mind and body imbalances and illness?
I would say 100%. And here's why. The premise of medical intuition is that the body stores or holds information from our lives, not just physical. It holds physical. It also holds emotional, mental, and spiritual information. And all of that together as one can create a pattern, so to speak, of an energetic pattern, you could say, even a physical pattern, that a medical intuitive can visually see the way I do it, or access and explain to the client, and work with that to find paths to healing. That's the goal, and that's the premise of the skill set. So I don't see them as remotely separate, but I will say, and this is to honor the work of Carolyn Mace and to honor the work of Edgar Cayce, is that a medical intuitive should be able to read the physiology of the body. You should be able to see that. That's the word medical kind of speaks to that. Healing, certainly, but that's my perspective on it. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And In addition, or very much connected to emotions, thoughts, and feelings, what role does love play in health, wellness, and healing or recovery?
Emmy, you always ask the greatest questions. I gotta say, love, yes. Love is the key, and I will tell you that most people that I've seen who are suffering with illnesses and stuff like that, the piece that seems to be, not always, but seems to be somewhat missing is self-love. Self-love. We have to honor ourselves. And I'm not saying that's the key or panacea to everything, but when someone is suffering with a health issue, it affects everyone on the mental, emotional, and spiritual as well as the physical. And so that needs to be addressed. We need to be able to look ourselves in the eye in the mirror and say, even though this is happening, I love myself and I respect myself and I support myself. That seems to be a missing piece, not only in health and wellness, but pretty much every part of the human experience, you know?
Absolutely. It's so interesting because when we think about what love is, there are many definitions for it. And we're not talking just about romantic love. We're talking about really that unity consciousness, what connects us to everything. So, we come to this earth and we feel separate, but really we're not. And so there's some element, it's kind of interesting, of needing to feel that joy, that love, that connection, that beauty that is what our divine spark and who we are as that connection to all.
Beautifully said. I couldn't have said it better myself. And that again, is the energetics and quantum physics and spiritual side of this work that you cannot separate out. That's challenging for me because I speak with doctors all the time and they're like, you get too woo-woo with them and they kind of, walk away. So
Well, they'll be back when they see you helping more of their patients, for sure.
well, they're already part of our dynamic, and I'm really pleased to say that the medical world, certainly the integrative and complementary and holistic medical world, is very open to this, more so now than ever. And I will talk briefly, if I can, about the research that we've done. Our initial research that I did with my graduates in 2020, it was published in 2020. We did this research in 2019. We found that the graduates in blinded sessions with members of the public, some of whom were patients at UCSD Medical Center, that they were able to, they received 94% accuracy rates from those people in the location evaluation of their primary health issue. Again, no intake, blinded sessions. They also received 98% accuracy in the description of life history that may have informed their health issues. It was very much a one-to-one. We love that number. We also received 94% consistency with their known medical diagnoses. About half of them knew and had a diagnosis. Again, the medical intuitives don't diagnose, but they described the issue that was consistent with the diagnosis. Now, that was that was peer reviewed in that wonderful journal of integrative and complementary medicine, and really raised some antenna out there in the medical field, you can imagine. And since then, we've been working on a new study with a wonderful research organization called IONS, and we're going to be partnering with an academic institution as well, partnering medical intuitives, patients, and doctors together so we can see how this can work in the real world with a doctor. And we're finding so much great interest in this because it's very novel. They're really, this model exists only very, very minor in very minor ways. And we want to see this, we want to see more of this, right? So that's what we're up to now, and we're very excited about that.
Just to mention that IONS is the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and that organization actually was founded by Edgar Mitchell, who, when he was coming back to Earth, he had what some people might refer to as a spiritually transformative experience.
Right.
And
He was an astronaut.
yeah,
Like, where
right.
was he? Coming back to Earth.
Yeah. No, thanks for mentioning that. Exactly. Yeah, right. Everybody should just know he was coming back as an astronaut.
I actually thought he died and come back, so I'm glad you did.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I
Clarify
missed
that.
that part. there's also another organization that you are a part of nationally.
Yes, this organization is the National Organization for Medical Intuition. And this is we just launched this year and we're so excited about it. This is the first that we're aware of, national and actually worldwide organization to bring together medical intuitives for the purpose of education and awareness and outreach. So what we're doing is what we've provided is a code of ethics for the practice of medical intuition. We've provided standards of practice, guidelines for how to work your practice, and we provide different levels of membership. And one of our goals is to bring the medical intuitives into healthcare, because we really feel strongly, the board as like-minded medical intuitives and myself, we want to see this integrated into healthcare. We want to see it taken seriously as a healthcare support system. And all the medical intuitives that have been coming to join us are in alignment with this 100%. They get it. And this is a wonderful growing thing. So any professional medical intuitives out there, please come and look at it's NOMI, N-O-M-I, National Organization for Medical Intuition, nomimedicalintuition.org. And we welcome you, and we'd love to interface and interact with you as well.
Yeah, well, thank you for all of your fabulous work, Wendie. Since you don't diagnose people, clearly you are looking into the body. So how do you work then with a healthcare practitioner, like a physician or nurse practitioner, to assist them in, can you explain that relationship a little bit of what your role is and what the doctor's role is in that relationship?
Oh, it's actually very easy to explain. What I do is I look at what's going on and I describe it. And the client, if there's no doctor involved, the client will take their own notes and take that to their medical professionals. That's what I instruct them to do. Please take this information, because it's not a diagnosis, to your medical professional. And I'm to tell you, the doctors love that, because the description, it's very much like when a patient says, I feel this, it hurts here. But with medical intuition, boy, do you get detail. So that detail can be given to the doctor, and they can help, it helps them create diagnoses. It helps them think about how, what other testing they might do. In the book, I've interviewed a lot of doctors, and I've asked them understanding what medical intuition is, how do they think it would help them? And in fact, there's a whole area in chapter 10 where what would a medical intuitive doctor do, somebody that actually has this skill set, how would they use it in their practice? And also throughout the book, how would a patient bring it to their doctor, right? And then what do the doctors think? The doctors love this idea, right? Carolyn Mace has stories in her book about being able to work with doctors and say, here's what I see, and that helps the doctor help the patient. That's the goal. That's the goal of medical intuition, the way I see it. We have information that can help you. And by the way, nurses have been doing this for decades. They're working closely with the patients. The doctors are not everyday hands-on the way the nurses are. And the nurses will intuit something's wrong. Now, they may not know exactly what it is, but they'll say, doctor, you need to take a look at this because whatever's going on here. And the doctors, if they're, they listen, they'll do it. And so nurses are naturally asked to be intuitive, and they actually are asked to trust their gut. And so this is how we feel that this can enhance healthcare. Imagine having a medical intuitive on staff at a hospital. Imagine having a medical intuitive in the clinic, in the doctor's office. Imagine if your doctor or your nurse was a medical intuitive and they could freely give that information to you and to your healthcare professionals. Would that change medicine? Tell me.
Absolutely.
It's a huge paradigm shift, right?
Yes.
So we want that paradigm shift. And because the skill set is available, why not, right? It needs to be practiced ethically. It needs to be practiced with understanding. But in my opinion, it needs to be in healthcare.
Right. And there are more organizations that have brought in, like you've said, energy healing practitioners and other folks guiding patients. I used to actually work at a program here in Minneapolis, the Penny George Institute for Health and Healing. We provided many of those services that really work. The practitioner really taps into our intuition. That's a fundamental component. And then, for example, like with guided imagery, I mean, sometimes I would only see 5 patients in a day because I would walk about 5 miles a day, and I might not always get the patient, or they, need an x-ray. And I would usually get maybe 15, 20 minutes tops. This was inpatient. I also worked outpatient, and I would guide them sometimes in a guided imagery technique, and it helped them to connect to their own inner wisdom, their own intuition. And in many cases, it helped them. In fact, there was a research study done on this. I'll go ahead and just say the stats briefly, that 80% of the people were able to reduce their pain and anxiety levels by 50% in under 15, 20 minutes. And this is when they were already on the max pain and anxiety medications, and they had already been seen by the pain doctor. But even in those high intensity moments, somebody had just had surgery, they're 10 plus 10 out of 10 pain, I was able to help people access their own inner knowing.
Wonderful. And that, this whole resurgence, or this whole push to mind-body practices, guided imagery, meditation, medical intuition is an assessment process. So, it's part of that too, you could say. And these skill sets are so important. And, when you look at the history of this, it wasn't that long ago that, the Western medicine world would they just remove you. They wouldn't, it's like, there's no room for this. So the fact that we're seeing this, incorporated in many hospitals is phenomenal.
Yeah. My time with being a co-host on New Thinking Aloud, I've had the opportunity to, I know I've interviewed you there, Wendie. We had a great conversation as well. I've also been able to interview other medical practitioners, including physicians and other academics who have been working in universities for a number of years. And there's a theme, although I think it's starting to change for sure, where many of these people are retired and they're finally writing their book because they've had 40 years of experience. In fact, I just interviewed a physician, a psychiatrist out of Canada. He passed last year, and he wrote a book called A Psychiatrist Destigmatizes the Paranormal. And he just wrote this beautiful book about how he can delineate when somebody is, quote, psychic or, quote, psychotic. And he was able to then get it out to the world. So I see what you're doing, and why Abby and I wanted to have this summit is to help raise the vibration and awareness around how powerful intuition is, and that it can be valid, it can be replicated, you can trust it, and it can give you such strong information that it can even go into somebody's health records in their own, core being of their blueprint. And that you can show, Wendie, with your research, that you can show reliably again and again that this is something you can actually assess that's connected to their own health and well-being.
Yeah, we're living in a very exciting time for this. I don't, just in my lifetime, I don't recall anything being as this robust in terms of the understanding of body, mind, spirit, and how it can really integrate in all, not just in healthcare, but in all areas. And I encourage anyone to, who's interested in this, to read up on everything Emmy's talking about, and all the wonderful guests on your show. We're all aligned in this idea that healthcare and other areas are really ripe for expansion into these parts of human nature that have been, really sidelined for decades and centuries, you could even say, for a lot of obvious reasons. But now's a great time for it. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
And it starts with the kids. It starts with us and the kids. And I was like, I should have mentioned the website. It's www.theintuitivechild.co. If your child or children, we got approved in the school system. So I believe, like what you're doing, Wendie, that there's going to be a wave in the school system where people are opening. And it's slowly but surely, but it's like, I think giving everybody an experience of intuition, if we can maybe take a few minutes to do that right now, because I'm so big on like truth and connection to our own bodies. If we can just feel what truth feels like in our body, and then notice, like I said before, if our body's giving us any feedback, what's actually happening. So feel the truth within you and have that conversation within your own self of, okay, what's happening, right? And what do I need to do to actually move back into alignment with that truth and that love? Just because I feel like it's all possible, just even in the moment before it has to get to a more detrimental condition, if we just listen to what's happening in the moment. I don't know if there's anything else you want to share on that, Wendie or Emmy.
Thank you for bringing that up, Abby, because I did want to touch on that with you. And yeah, so if you could guide us in some type of exercise, Wendie, if you're up for that, and also that preventative component, because we all are born intuitive. It's just how much we're aware of it or not. And like you mentioned, Wendie, some children are encouraged like we were, that's why we're here, or at least our parents were open to it, where some other people might have been told that that's something to be afraid of or worse. So right, it's something that we have innately within ourselves. So that prevention and wellness component, we can catch some of these well, from a genetic perspective, they'll say that there's a genetic predisposition to some type of illness or disease. You could say it's a soul imprint or a karmic pattern, but we can maybe catch it before it manifests into something larger that's more difficult maybe to recover from.
You know, these are all beautiful topics, and I'm in alignment with all of them. It's such a personal experience that my recommendation is let it be that. In other words, on the website, thepracticalpath.com, please do go check out the guided imagery, the guided meditations. They're all about energy hygiene. They're all about your personal experience. Keep a journal. I really like that. When you have an intuition, write it down, refer to it, date it. It's always a good thing, so that you can refer back and say, oh, you know what? I had an inkling about that. I had an intuition about that 2 months ago, and look what's happening now. And that can really help solidify how to develop your intuition. And in the book as well, Essentials of Medical Intuition, there's a lot of exercises in there as well people can take advantage of, and the upcoming self-study program. So there's a lot of resources here, and they're all of value and beautiful. And I encourage everyone to start to notice their intuition, pay attention to it, and it will grow.
What are some simple ways that you can share with our listeners and viewers on how they can begin to become more aware of their intuition?
Well, having a meditation practice, I think, is a cornerstone. And that quiets the mind. Really, honestly, any meditation is good. Even just sitting outside in nature and breathing and closing your eyes and feeling, the energy around you, that is meditative. Anything that gets us out of that mental chatter so that we can start to expand, feel more expansive in our energy, feel more calm in our nervous system. Breathing meditations are good. And there's a whole range of things, transcendental meditation, mindfulness, and so many others. But having that in your day, even if it's 5 minutes, to sit and just breathe. Wow, what a boon to your body. What a boon to your mind and spirit. Just 3 slow breaths. Let's do that together. Take a deep breath in. Hold it for a couple of counts before you let it go, and breathe out. One more time, breathe in. Hold it, and breathe out. And just the simple act of calming the limbic system and the nervous system is so healing for the body. So take a moment in your day. I mean, life is stressful. There's so much going on. I suggest you take some breathing moments anytime you can. If you have a meditation practice, try to do it daily if possible, but don't stress yourself out over it. That's another pitfall. Take it easy and enjoy that connection between spirit, mind, and body.
Yeah, to feel into yourself and to just be. I did that this morning. The sun was coming up and I went out in my garden. It's a beautiful fall day here in Minnesota, and just let the sun wash over me. And it was just a nice moment before getting into the activities of the day.
I call these take a little bliss break. That's what I call them.
Oh,
Take a
lovely.
bliss break. Just
Well,
breathe, let the sun come in.
yes, yes. And we're part of nature. So it's helpful to connect with it and be in it. And I even know with your background and my background in healthcare that and hospitals, they'll even flash nature images because they know from a psychological perspective, even just seeing images, somebody having a brick wall outside of their hospital room versus seeing greenery, or even if you're not in a hospital, even if you're, where you live, what you see out your window or what you have access to, within walking distance can really impact your health and wellness.
There are studies about that too. I wrote about that in the book. So much good stuff out there to learn and to educate yourself about. And just to get to the book real quickly here before we end, The Essentials of Medical Intuition, A Visionary Path to Wellness is available at Amazon, on the website as well, and Barnes & Noble and wherever books are sold. And it is meant to explain the history and the uses and value of medical intuition. Again, lots of interviews with doctors and medical intuitives, case studies, a lot of research shown in the book. So I was able to kind of put together all the existing research that I could find on medical intuition to date. And so people have found that to be a very good reference book for this sort of thing, but it's also lots of good stories in there as well.
I've read the book and I think it was very well written and very clear with beautiful explanations.
This is the beginning of an understanding of what medical intuition is and what it can actually bring to everyone.
Wendie, is there anything else you want to share today? I know it's a big topic. We can't cover everything, and I think you've done an excellent job providing so much information. Is there anything else you want to share with our viewers today?
Well, I would say that please go to the website, thepracticalpath.com. There's loads of resources, lots of information about medical intuition, really fun visualizations and guided meditations as well. And I would say that's a great resource point. There are books that I love. There's just tons of stuff there. So go and have fun with that. And if you have any questions, please do reach out.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's always a fun conversation. And yeah, I love, I think the original question was just, asking ways that people can tune in the moment to the truth of their bodies and have that conversation. So I didn't know if there's anything you wanted to share with them about how they could even do that in this present moment. Just, I know for me, like experience is the best teacher, right? So I can hear about things, but then it's like when I actually feel it, I become it. So I'd love to just offer the listeners, and I can actually even do it if you don't want to, but just a connection to their own body and the truth so they can start developing their relationship to their body in a really healthy way. If there's anything that comes through for you to share.
Sure. The grounding and shielding is the step 1 and 2, really. Releasing is another step. And, I think the best way to do this, and I know we all want to do it in the moment, but I will tell you that it's such a personal experience that my suggestion is go to the website and listen to the audio called Your Body's Wisdom. It is a step-by-step process. It takes about 7 minutes or so, where you're going to learn how to have that conversation deeply with your body. It's wonderful to be able to sit and connect at any moment. You can do it, but the gift that I can give here is actually this methodical process of how to tap in and how to start to dialogue in a very deliberate way with your liver or your knee or your ankle or your whatever, and that's fascinating. And that would take a little too long to do here. So I'm going to say, go to the website and listen. All of my students send their patients there and people really love it.
Thank you for that resource, Wendie. Abby, did you want to take a minute or two? And it sounds like there's something you might want to offer, or do you want to?
I mean, if they haven't gone to the intuitivechild.co, you can check that out there. And Wendie, yeah, absolutely. If you want to connect more later, it's exciting to just kind of give the information for people, parents, teachers, to hold the space for kids, and then kids to learn, oh yeah, I can, trust myself and trust what I see. And I worked at a school last year and kids were like developing their own businesses. It's like they know so much. So if we really listen to what's there, I feel like a lot of disease can be prevented, because they're following their hearts and their own intuitions rather than what society thinks they should do, or their, parents, if they're not on board with their intuition yet. So I just want to encourage, parents, teachers, people, even if a kid's watching this, to trust yourself and your intuition, because there is that soul wisdom that I feel is beyond the physical and can manifest through the physical. So I just really want to empower people to listen to their own heart call, and what's guiding them.
That's beautiful. Well, we're on the same page.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely.
So beautiful.
That's really key what you just said, Abby, and something that I kind of wanted to weave in this conversation, and we'll see, Wendie, if you agree with this, is that it seems that imbalances can occur when we aren't in alignment with our intuition, our inner knowing throughout life. Do you find that in your work, Wendie, that some of the imbalances or disease that's happened for people is because they haven't been connected to their soul's wisdom as far as maybe making a decision, or maybe, I mean, I understand there's grief and loss that can cause a lot of distress that's very real as well, but that if somebody, for example, worked at a job for decades and their soul was just crumbling because it really wasn't authentically what they really felt in their heart to do.
I'll answer that this way. I think you're correct. There's two answers I want to give here. The first one is that when we're out of alignment with our soul's path, yeah, it's not going to feel good. I mean, it's pretty obvious, and sometimes it's not so obvious because we feel we have duties and obligations and whatnot, and all that's important. But it's so individual to everyone that
Right.
it's a little challenging to make a blanket statement. However, one of the things that the research shows is that early life traumatic experience can lead a very clear line, although they're not quite sure how that line is created. They see the link between that and later life experience, later life health issues.
Right.
And that's interesting. And there's decades of research on this through the NIH and I believe. And they've done study after study on it. So what does that mean? Ultimately, it means if we're not in alignment, if we've had trauma or traumatic experience in life, it changes our perception. That's really what that means, is it changes our perception. It sets up ways of thinking, ways of acting, ways of being, behaviors and such that can be detrimental because they're compensating for trauma, right? They're adjusting for trauma. Well, I'm not a psychologist, so I can't speak to it from that perspective. However, energetically, we see this as anomalies, as blockages, as imbalances, and then we see the physical manifestation of those things. That's all very relevant information that Western medicine hasn't really known how to handle or deal with. Medical intuitives, the way I train people, we're here to look at not only the large traumas, which are usually obvious and usually people have an understanding of it, but what about all that subtle trauma that goes on in life? You break something, you get yelled at. That sounds very innocuous, but that can also set up imbalances in the energy field, which can also lead to issues later. So it all works together. It's all relevant. It's all important. And, from my perspective, medical intuition is the best tool and skill, I should say, to assess and access where those things are and what is requested of the body and the spirit to help heal that. So, not surprisingly, in my program, I have MDs, I have nurses, I have psychologists, I have coaches, I have massage therapists, people who are in the healthcare field who want to help their clients in this broad spectrum, kind of 360-degree view of health. And that's really what I can offer in terms of an educator, in terms of people using this for themselves as well.
Yeah, those are great resources. And it also, of course, there are people who are born with congenital diseases and might need surgery even when they're a baby. Or, of course, there's all sorts of conditions that can happen. And sometimes people might not even perceive them as conditions, but it's just part of what happens. And then people have car accidents or other types of injuries. So there's a whole spectrum, but really I think, would you agree, Wendie, that it really, we've been saying, it's really individual to each soul and what's happening for them on their journey.
It is so individual that it is a soapbox that I stand on. And that soapbox is, if we come to healthcare with inherent biases, we're going to miss things. And the way I practice medical intuition is with no biases, because I can't have them. Otherwise, I'll miss something in your energy. Why would I want to do that? Why would I impose my way of thinking on your physiology and biofield? It's ridiculous. So that is a big shift from how pretty much every form of healthcare works. And so that's what, I'll say it again, that's what medical intuition can offer healthcare and individuals, because our life experience, as you say, there's congenital issues, there's epigenetics. How about that whole story where trauma comes down the family line? There's so many pieces of this that are asking to be parsed out so that real, true, vibrant, connected health can occur. And
Mhm.
it's a journey, as you said.
Just to reiterate, you have a program that teaches people how to connect with their own intuition for their own health and wellness. And then you also have a program where you teach professionals how to do this. Is that right?
Exactly. The first program is called Medical Intuition for Healing and Self-Care. It's a self-study program. It's very in-depth, and you'll come out of it learning how to dialogue the way I do with your body. You'll be able to dialogue with your own body, and that's a fantastic skill to have. Just so many great testimonials for that. People having, hearing from their spleen or whatever, what it wants. What a cool thing to do, right? And the main program is a one-year program for healthcare professionals where they learn how to do it with their patients and clients. And that's what medical intuition is about.
Awesome. And also you have a free gift that you're offering to people listening.
Yes, and let me just also piggyback on that. The one-year program for healthcare professionals is all taught live online. It's highly mentored. It's with me and my teaching staff, and you'll get hands-on work with that. The free gift I'm very happy to give everyone is when you go to the website and sign up for the newsletter, you'll get a free ebook on my favorite blogs about intuition, articles, and a little intuition test you can take about your own intuition. A lot of fun things in that.
Awesome. Wendie, thank you so much for being here, joining us today in our beautiful Intuition Summit, and also Abby, for you continuing to shine your light on all of us. And I wish you great continued success, Wendie, in everything that you're doing. For one who's been in healthcare for 30 years and sees how phenomenal this is and can be, I just am continuing to cheer you on.
Thank you so much, both of you. It's what a pleasure. Have a beautiful day, and I hope everyone really enjoys this wonderful summit.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening. Bye for now. Be well.